But that really is going to be the subject tonight, though, is Leonardo DiCaprio. It's really going to fucking motherfucker.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Nom Bros Pod. I'm John.
I'm Justin. Thanks for joining us, guys. How you doing, man?
I'm good, good. Really excited for our discussion tonight.
Yeah, jumping into tonight's episode, we were going to talk about Shutter Island, Martin Scorsese's 2010 film, I believe.
Hmm.
It's a good movie, it's got a stacked cast, a great story, great twist, and one of those twists that really has people talking. And, that's obviously what we're going to be diving into tonight is the twist. And if Teddy Daniels is in fact Andrew Laeddis, or if he is being brainwashed.
We differ on the meaning of this movie.
Great story, great score, great twist ending. One of those endings that really has the fans, the viewers, talking about.
Yeah, dude, this is honestly one of my favorite movies of Martin Scorsese's, I should say. I think it's really underrated, underappreciated for what it is. And, when we were talking about it this week, we thought it would be a great idea. You think Leo is actually Andrew Laeddis. I think
Yes.
he's been gaslit into believing that he's crazy. I think he's actually Teddy Daniels. Obviously, the general consensus of the movie, if anyone were to Google it, is he's guilty. He's Andrew Laeddis. But there's a lot of theories on Reddit and whatnot about why there is evidence as to why he could have been actually brainwashed and gaslit into believing he's crazy. So I
Mm,
thought it would be fun if we talked about it
yeah,
and kind of brought counter argument points to one another as to why you think he's guilty, I think he's innocent. We don't have to go through the entire movie, but like, why don't you
sure.
present your case? I'll present mine, and at the end of it, either we agree or we disagree. But I thought it would be, as opposed to us just talking about a movie that we both love this movie, but we disagree about the meaning of it and the
Yeah.
actual conclusion of it. So, yeah, how does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good. And, just to let you know, I'll try to go in order the best I can throughout the movie with examples. If you want to
Okay.
jump in, please jump right in. But yeah, I mean, I know I just said that I'm going in order, but one thing I want to start with is the anagrams of the name. The wordplay of the name. If you shift around the letters for not just Leo's character, but Michelle Williams' character,
Hmm.
Dolores, this is the tail end. I just wanted to start with this because Edward Daniels is flipped to Andrew Laeddis, and Rachel Solando, the quote unquote missing patient, once you flip around her letters, is Dolores Chanel.
Yes.
I believe that's how you pronounce the last name at least.
Yeah.
So that's just one thing I wanted to start with is Leo looking for himself and looking for quote unquote the lost patient, but really his wife, essentially. There's so many things, man, from start to finish, and it really just kicks off the opening scene on the boat. There's so many mental blocks, if you will, with water.
Hmm.
He gets severely seasick on the boat. One really cool thing in the opening scene on the boat is the freeze frame that Martin Scorsese uses, and it's when Leo is asked by the way, Mark Ruffalo plays Chuck or Doctor, if you will.
Right.
Love his character. He actually plays in Zodiac, which is another amazing performance, great movie. But when he asks Leo off the bat, what happened to your girlfriend? What happened to your wife? There's a bit of a flashback there, if you will. And he says, she died. A lot of choppy water shots and a freeze frame. And I feel like if you think about any film that Martin Scorsese has done, he loves utilizing freeze frames to really get across something big that is happening that he wants you to pick up on. Right?
Right. Great.
Keeping the
Yep.
Yeah, keeping the mental blocks so I don't go all over the place. When they're interviewing patients, when Leo is sitting next to Chuck, as he calls him, Mark Ruffalo, when they're interviewing patients, one of the patients comes up and she goes to take a sip of water. And if you notice, It's almost like she's not even holding anything.
Hmm.
And in my opinion, that's Leo DiCaprio's character still having a mental block with the water, and he's just so traumatized by water in general because of what his wife did to their children in the water, in the lake, in the back of their house. And it's almost like he's incapable of even seeing it. It's like his mind just blocks it out. It's just like a way of him responding to his trauma, if you will. Another thing I wanted to talk about was he never has his own cigarettes. He never has his own lighter, and he's really chain smoking throughout the entire flick for the most part. But when you really pay attention throughout the movie from start to finish, it's always given to him. Cigarettes are always given to him. Lighters are always given to him. That's because he's a patient. And treatment facilities, especially ones like this, with patients like this, they're not going to let him have stuff like that. Especially fire, right? Cigarettes is one thing, but like access to fire. So if you pay attention to that, he never has his own cigarettes, always given to him. Another thing is when they arrive to the ward, you notice his clothes are so baggy. And, I think a lot of people interpret that as in they're really not his clothes that he's wearing. They're literally just like grabbed off the shelves and like given to him for this given to him for this experiment, if you will. If you pay attention to everybody else throughout the film, like they literally are wearing like tailored suits, like tailored jackets, everything fits to a T. But Leo DiCaprio's character, he's just wearing kind of like the baggiest like trench coat, the suit a little bit. It's like these clothes aren't his. And I think that's another, point to bring up. He's really not a U.S. Marshal. He's just a patient. And they're like, well, we have to dress him like one. So go and find a fucking suit and a jacket and give it to him so he can play Marshal. Getting to Shutter Island, there's some creepy shit going on. One thing you have to point out is how on high alert the entire security staff is when they pull up. I mean, there's literally 10 security, if not more, surrounding DiCaprio and Ruffalo, literally guns drawn. And it's like, why would you be this paranoid? Why would you be this bugged out if you have two U.S. Marshals coming through to try to help you solve a case, to try to help you solve, a missing patient, but like they have their guns drawn because they know this is actually Andrew Laeddis. He's extremely dangerous. He has a severe mental disorder and they don't know what he's capable of doing, so they need to have their fucking guns drawn. And that actually kind of carries through when they get into the Jeep, which, by the way, the main guard, he is the actor who plays You After Lunch from Fargo, and
And in
also,
Zodiac.
yeah, and Arthur Lee Allen
Hmm.
in The Zodiac. Great actor, great
I think
supporting cast this
John
movie
Carroll
has.
Lynch, I believe is his name.
Is that his name,
I
dude?
think, yeah.
Great supporting cast, right? But when they get in the Jeep, Mark Ruffalo makes it a point to be like, "Wow, a lot of people on edge here, right?" And Arthur Lee Allen kind of like takes a hit of his cigar and says, "Right now, we all are." And I look at that as in like he realizes how I want to say maybe dangerous this is, silly it is. I feel like if you really pay attention to a lot of staff, they're kind of like laughing at this entire thing.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Like, why are we wasting our time with this?" And specifically his character, the main, security guard, like for him to make a comment like that, I think it really just highlights where he is mentally and where his whole fucking team is, essentially. Now, when they drive the Jeep to the actual ward, if you will, creepy scene. DiCaprio's walking up and he looks straight at this patient. She's got a large scar across her throat, bloody hands, bloodshot eyes, hair is gone. And what I took from this, and I think a lot of people take from this too, is when you look at those types of physical symptoms, the hair loss, the skin tone, the bloodshot eyes, it's almost like she herself recently had a lobotomy, which is a very serious neurosurgical procedure that severs nerve paths essentially in the brain. And it really targets the frontal lobe and treats patients with severe psychiatric disorders. And it's almost like she's looking at DiCaprio like saying, shh, because she knows if you don't get your fucking shit together or if you don't start acting a certain type of way, they're gonna do to you what just happened to me. And she's telling him, get it together, dude.
But
That's where
how
I
would she
took
know
that.
how would she know how to give him that kind of warning if she just had a lobotomy? She wouldn't.
Mm,
She'd be a vegetable essentially, right? You're making all great points, but they're all points that I feel like I can directly prove with at least a reasonable doubt that they're circumstantial. Okay, let's go from the top. The guard, John Carroll Lynch. He says, right now, Marshall, we all are. He could be saying that about Leo DiCaprio knowing that he's an actual marshal coming here to blow the lid off the place because the two marshals have that conversation in the graveyard later in the movie, and his partner, Chuck, tells him, when you were looking into Shutter Island, they were looking into you. He continues to feed him that conspiracy that they're trying to break out of his mind. Like, why would they do that? Like that. So maybe John Carroll Lynch is saying, right now we all are nervous because they've got a U.S. Marshal there trying to prove that there's Nazi doctors there and that they're doing all this illegal conspiracy government psyop shit. And then what was the other thing you just said? There was another.
I brought up him never having cigarettes or a lighter.
Yes, 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 yes.
Brought that up.
I think that's interesting, because like that's like his first line of the movie practically is like, "Where's my goddamn cigarettes?" And it's
Hmm.
kind of a weird first thing to like go for, even if you're crazy, is like, where are my cigarettes at? Like I just had them. He says it so convincingly, like I just had my cigarettes and now they're
Yeah.
gone. Like it almost makes you think right off the get-go, like his shit, he was drugged and his shit was tampered with and stolen off of him. I think one of the biggest things I have a problem with is how did they get everyone to go along with this role play? Patients are interviewed and have to play along. How are you getting mentally insane patients to go along with this role play? You know what I mean? Guards, sure. The boat attendant, maybe even, sure. But they all are perfect actors for it, which
Hmm.
seems suspicious to me. It seems more like what we'll talk about later. Like, don't you think it would be hard to keep the mental patients on script?
Hmm.
The guards even on script?
I mean, that's a good point. I don't know. I kind of look at something like that, like, well, it is a movie, you know what I mean? And if you really like dive deep into it, it's like, I don't know if there's some type of like reward system, like here's more cigarettes for you.
Yeah, sure.
Here's what
Okay.
we're going to be having for lunch or for dinner. Maybe if they're dealing with any people who have a history of addiction, they're like, hey, we'll up your meds for these days so you sleep extra good. I mean, I don't know. It's just
I get that. That's fair.
dealing with that community of people, I feel like there's a lot of ways that they could kind of bribe them, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
No, no, one last thing I want to throw at you for like the opening, and then I'll let you have the floor. Is I brought up the cigarettes. I meant to bring up when they're getting off the boat the gun. Obviously, like I said, like the security guards all have their guns drawn on Leo and Mark Ruffalo's character for whatever reason. If they're marshals, I don't see why they would do that, but they're asking them both to hand over their guns. And if you notice, Leo DiCaprio is having such a difficult time pulling his gun out of the holster that he eventually is like, fuck it, just take the whole holster and leave the
You mean
gun in.
Chuck? Chuck does that.
No, Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, really? I thought it was just the partner.
Um, I thought it was Leo DiCaprio's character where he's having a difficult time with his gun and he can't pull it. And let's say even if it is, like let's say it's Mark Ruffalo, regardless, like if they're U.S. Marshals, they shouldn't have issues with pulling their guns. You know what I mean? I feel like they've been around the block. They would have experience, putting a gun in and out of a holster. So the fact
Yeah,
that you can't handle that and you're just like, screw it, just take the whole holster while the gun's in it. I think that also shows the lack of experience there and really shows that like they don't know how to handle a firearm or the
totally.
accessories that go along with it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I think you're totally right. But I do believe it's Mark Ruffalo's character who can't get it out of the holster. So he pulls the whole holster out, and Leo is actually standing there like side-eyeing him, like, I know you're my new partner, but like that was weird.
Hmm. Is it
Um,
Ruffalo?
I believe it is. Yeah, I really
Okay.
do. And okay, speaking about the guns, we come to find out that his gun is a toy.
Yeah.
So I have a few things about this interaction when they arrive that I find very odd. Okay. Why
Hmm.
do they need him to turn in his gun at all if they know it's a toy? It's not a real gun. So if it was a real gun, that would make more sense. Like we need to get the marshal's gun because when he finds out what's going on here, he can't have a fucking gun.
Hmm.
If it's a toy from the get-go, why do they care if he's carrying around a toy gun? You
Hmm.
know, like he's not gonna go trying to use it on day one anyway. He doesn't try to use a gun until the third day he's there. So I think that that's kind of either it's a plot hole or it's he had a real gun at the start of his visit and they needed to get it from him and then they swap it out by the end of the movie.
Hmm.
I think that that kind of helps my case. I think it was a real gun and they needed to get the guns from the marshals. That warden, John Carroll Lynch, also says to him, "You need written approval." He's giving them the tour, and he's like, "Here's Ward A and Ward B. That's Ward C. No one is allowed in Ward C without being accompanied by the doctors and myself, and you need written approval to go in Ward C." He's like, "Is that understood?" Yet that night, the storm knocks out the power, and Chuck, his buddy, his partner, who they try to convince him later is a doctor, his primary care psychiatrist, he convinces Leo to break the rules and go join him in Ward C when they were deliberately told you can't do that. So why would you do that as a psychiatrist involved in like what's the whole purpose then of that initial speech by John Carroll Lynch, the warden in the beginning of the movie? Like you can't do this and you can't do this. But then the partner is like letting him break the rules when no one's watching anyway. Why would he do that? Why would he let him break the rules and go into Ward C by himself unless he wanted to set him up the way I feel like they set him up? And we'll get
Yeah.
to Ward C because I have something else to talk about, but I really like the introduction here that Leo gets to the doctors. You know, he's looking around the doctor's office and that doctor says something that I find interesting too. He says, "What we offer here is a moral fusion between law and order and clinical care." And Chuck, the partner, goes, "Pardon me, doctor, but between what and what?" And if you notice, Leo is looking at pictures on the wall, and that doctor doesn't answer Chuck. Why would Chuck even have to ask that question? He
Hmm.
knows because he's a psychiatrist. So why is he like playing dumb and being like, I'm sorry, between what and what? Okay, yeah, you could say he's pretending to be a marshal and be oblivious to it, but the fact that that doctor doesn't answer his question is kind of weird. There's just this long, awkward silence before he goes and approaches Leo looking at the pictures on the wall. And I also feel like Teddy Daniels, he asks, you know, these patients are all violent offenders where they've killed people in some cases. And the doctor responds with, you know, in almost all cases, yes. And then he says, well, then I'd have to personally say doctors screw their sense of calm. And the camera quick shows Mark Ruffalo, and he's kind of like smirking at the other doctor when he says that. Don't you think if you're trying to bring Leo back to sanity in this case, and he still like has these violent, aggressive thoughts about mentally ill patients, he shouldn't be smiling when he says that. It's almost like it's a smile like, oh, we have a good candidate here. This guy's sick. As opposed to, oh, damn it, Teddy. Like, damn it, Andrew. You weren't supposed to say screw their sense of calm. We're hoping to see like improvements already. You know what I mean? It's not what he should have said in that moment to a doctor. A doctor wants to hear them be like, more empathetic or compassionate or understanding, not I'd have to say screw their sense of calm. And you know, he literally smiles and like smirks when he says that and is like, like wow, okay.
Yeah.
That kind of stood out to me. It didn't fit, like it didn't work. So I don't know. I that whole first day, why would Mark Ruffalo be helping with Teddy's investigations at all? They go into Rachel Solando's room and he's the one that points out that the number of shoes that Rachel Solando should have, there's both pairs of shoes in there, and he's the one that's like, so she's running around barefoot, Doc? Like she wouldn't get, 50 feet in this terrain. Why is he helping Leo at all with these questions? Why is he posing these questions when he's behind it himself? it's kind of like egging Leo on more and more to go deeper and deeper. They also find the note immediately. Who is 67
Hmm.
under the bed of Rachel Solando? Okay, so by the end of this movie, you believe that he's 67 and they want him to discover that for himself, right? That he's the 67th patient. He finds that note, and the main doctor, I forget his name, but he immediately tries to grab it from Leo and take it back. And he's like, "Oh, it's a clinical term. Let me have that." And Leo's like, "Nah, I think we'll hang on to this for now, doctor." And he's like, "Of course." So I found that interesting. Like, why are you planting a note of a clue for Leo to find, and then he finds it and asks, "Who is 67?" And Ruffalo's like, "Fuck if I know." And they look at the doctor, and he's like, "I don't know, but I'll take that." Why is he trying to take that after clearly wanting Leo to discover that he's the 67th patient? That doesn't really add up to me. We also have to go back real quick because they're searching the grounds with John Carroll Lynch, and Teddy Daniels asks John Carroll Lynch, "What's in those caves down there?" And he immediately pushes that aside and is like, "We've already looked. It's inaccessible. There's huge thorns. You know, you said it yourself. She doesn't even have shoes." Well, actually, he didn't say that. Mark Ruffalo said that. But why are they so quick to dismiss going and searching these caves if there's not actually somebody in the caves or a potential for for somebody to be there? Leo goes and checks out the caves later and finds somebody, which we'll get to. But I thought that was interesting. Just super dismissive and like trying to steer Leo more and more away from certain things that I feel like they don't, it doesn't help their case. I feel like it only helps continue to help Teddy Daniels believe his conspiracies if they're actually conspiracies.
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, those are some strong points. Multiple points I've never heard before. I think it's really just the doctors, the treatment facility, just laying as many breadcrumbs as possible to really get Leo's mind running, getting him to start asking questions and really start like looking deep within and connecting the dots himself, personally. Yeah, that's just kind of how I've interpreted like whenever I've had a discussion about this with anybody about, is he a patient, is he not? That's just where my mind always took me to was they're doing all of this shit intentionally just to get his brain going. A certain speed, a certain direction that they want it to go,
I get it. Yeah, I
what I
get it.
think of it.
Something else though that they also
Because
with
really quick, if I may, when you
yeah.
talk about them looking for Solando, it's really just Leo and Ruffalo.
Hmm.
I mean, it shows all the guards and they're just like sitting on their ass, like they're like smoking, like they're like talking, like they're literally not even working. They're just like sitting around. And what that shows me is they know there is no Solando. Like they know the point of this experiment. They like they'll go along with it, but as far as like going along with it, like going in caves and like going through the woods and like actually looking for a patient that's not there, I think they're like they think it's silly, and I think they think it would be a complete waste of time for them to do something that they know, has no point because they know Leo is looking for someone who's not there. You know what I mean?
That makes total sense, but they also could just not want to find somebody.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying is there's enough evidence to without a reasonable doubt that there's at least a chance they just don't actually want to help because they don't want to find somebody. But why would also the staff not comply with Leo's request to see and look at files of the staff who were working? The doctors are like, absolutely not. Out of the question. And he finally freaks out and is like, bullshit. Like, why out of the question? Like, who's in charge here anyway? Why is that so difficult to like, what is Leo? What even if he's actually Andrew Laeddis, what is he going to do with that information unless they didn't have something to hide? Like, what if they actually were Nazi scientists that Leo suspects? They go and they meet that other doctor for a cigar lounge night or whatever in the mansion, and he immediately is able to conclude that that one doctor it was a former German. And that guy's response when he gets called for it is like, is legal immigration a crime?
Hmm.
Like Okay, that kind of goes right into the conspiracy theories that Laeddis believes or that Teddy Daniels believes is going on at Shutter Island, experiments of the mind and whatnot. So
Mhm.
he's able to literally call that out from the get-go. Like he's a pretty smart guy. Um, you
I
know what I
think,
mean by that? Like,
yeah, I do. And, it may sound silly, my rebuttal to that, because of the amount of effort they put in, if my theory is correct, if I'm right and you're wrong. So this may sound silly, but to answer that specific question, maybe it's just as simple as like following HIPAA compliance and not showing other patient records,
sure,
which once again does sound ridiculous considering they're doing all of this for
right.
this one patient to have a realization and remember, the trauma that landed him in there. So I understand how like that could be a ridiculous answer, but
And this
to
is the
answer that
50s.
question, it may be something like that.
It
And
it could be.
you know what I mean? And I don't know what year HIPAA came into place, it's obviously a big thing now, but let's just say it came into place after the year that this movie is taking place. Maybe it was just like a lack of homework by the production team and they're like, "Oh, well, let's just throw HIPAA in
Sure.
there even though it wasn't even a thing at the time." You know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Fair. It could very well just be something along those lines, but yeah, I mean, this is the 50s, and it does just come across kind of more suspicious to me more
Mhm.
than anything that, like, okay, you're letting the most dangerous inmate, prisoner, patient that they have, they tell him that at the end of the movie, that you're the most dangerous we have, yet they let him run free for 3 fucking days
Mhm.
believing that he's a marshal, but you're going to draw the line at out of the question. You're not going to review any patient files. Like
Mhm.
maybe it's because the real patient files don't actually exist for anybody there. Again, I'll get to that point later on, but
Possibly. Yeah.
I just think that
Possibly.
that was very interesting. The whole Rachel killed her kids by drowning them.
Yeah.
Is that what they say to every patient that comes through that they want to brainwash and
Mhm.
control and gaslight them into believing that they're crazy? Maybe that's the same story they give everyone that comes through, or something along those lines. Maybe that's not actually exclusive to DiCaprio, to Teddy Daniels.
Yeah.
Maybe it's literally the same script that these people are running time and time again. Like I don't know. It just seems like they do gaslight him into believing he's crazy, and maybe Scorsese is even gaslighting the viewer as well into believing the doctors. This is Martin Scorsese we're talking about. Like he's one of the best directors of all time. And again, we'll get to more of that too. But yeah, it's
I
already
hear I hear that and I agree, but I will
Mhm.
say, we said very similar things about like Spielberg leading
Yeah,
up to Disclosure Day
yeah,
or even Nolan leading up to The Odyssey,
for
like
sure. Yeah,
these are some credentialed, talented individuals, but they still could fuck up. They still can have a plot hole or just a bad movie in general, which once again, I don't think this is a bad movie at all. I'm just using that as an example.
for sure.
But you just brought up, a great point. You're right. Like Leo's running the island for what was it, 3 days, 2 days?
Yeah,
And all the little adventures, all the little side quests he goes on. The main one for me is when him and Ruffalo are interviewing the patients.
yeah,
I had already brought up the mental blocks with the water, where they're talking to, I believe the patient's name is Mrs. Kern. And it's almost like when she goes to take a sip of water, like Leo can't see it. It's like he's like blocking it out mentally because of the trauma. But like that whole scene, there's so much more to unpack. He starts asking questions about Dr. Sheen because, Mrs. Kern brings up Dr. Sheen doing group therapy. And I believe she says like he was the last one who worked with Rachel. And he's like, tell me more about Dr. Sheen. Like, I forget exactly what he says to the patient, but he's like, tell me about him. Like, who is he? What does he do? And if you pay attention to Mrs. Kern, I believe the patient,
yeah, yeah.
she subtly glances to her left because she's looking at Mark Ruffalo, and Mark Ruffalo is Dr. Sheen, and she's almost like looking at him like, the fuck am I supposed to say? Like he's right. Like, you know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
like it's such like a weird question for her. Like even though she's, a mental patient, it's like she's like put on the spot with this like tell me about this doctor that is sitting right here that I believe is my U.S. Marshal partner. And she just kind of feels so awkward about it and just like I don't even really know what the fuck to say. Like I know I'm a part of this game right now, but like it's almost like she's like, this is not what I really signed up for. Like, I don't even know what the fuck to say here. So I found that so interesting that when he asked her that question, she looks directly at Mark Ruffalo's character because he is Dr. Sheen.
Sure.
And also too, when Ruffalo gets up, she grabs Leo's book. Remind me to come back to the book too, because I'm not done with that. But she grabs Leo's book and she writes "Run."
Hmm.
And eventually gets up and hauls ass. And once again, this kind of jumps back to what I was talking about with the creepy woman, when they first arrive on the island. It's almost like, she's in group therapy with Leo DiCaprio. It's like she's in the med line with Leo. She's eating lunch with him. Like she knows him. She knows okay, this is a sick individual. He struggles with X, Y, and Z mentally. And it's almost like, once again, they're all in on it, in my opinion. So it once again is like another person who like almost like cares about Leo because they live there. It's an inpatient facility essentially, saying like once again, like you need to get your fucking shit together or like run, because if you don't, I know what's going to happen to you. And at this point, Leo is completely oblivious, like he's still quote unquote a U.S. Marshal. So just the fact that she writes "run" there piggybacks on what I was talking about earlier with that creepy woman. And before we move on, too, speaking about that book, jumping back to the mental block or jumping back to the mental blocks with water. The very first guy, I believe he's in there for like stabbing a nurse or something or
Yeah.
something along those eyes, something along those lines. He brings up Rachel and how she quote unquote drowned her kids. And Leo is so triggered by that mentally, like right away, like his whole affect shifts. He like just kind of like looks up at him, just kind of with this glare, and you can tell is just bothered by it, triggered by it. And he kind of starts getting a little aggressive because he kind of just starts really like scribbling hard in his book. And it's almost like whenever he's around water, sees water, someone's talking about water, someone's talking about drowning, it's almost such like a breakthrough for him in a way. It's almost like he's starting to break and that connection to Laeddis
Hmm.
is like coming full surface. And it's almost like
Totally.
he's like resistant to that. And then the last point I have about this whole interrogation scene with the patients, if you will, the way it's shot. Leo DiCaprio, there's another guard, armed guard behind him, and there's an armed guard completely in front of him, behind the patient that they're interviewing. So if you know where Leo's sitting, there's literally an armed security guy here and here, Leo smack dab in the middle. But when it cuts to Mark Ruffalo's character, nobody's in the background. It's almost like, well, we don't have to fucking worry about this guy. He's a psychiatrist. Like, so I just found that the placement of the security once again in this scene very interesting that they are all hands on deck with Leo. They don't have anything to worry about with Mark Ruffalo. You know what I mean?
That's a good point. Good like symbolism there in the background for sure. I kind of feel like again that could maybe be debunked just for the sense or the fact that if his conspiracies are true, yes, they're gonna be having security closer to Leo the entire time because they are trying to turn him crazy. They're trying to make him believe he's crazy. And if shit goes wrong, then they need their guys to take him out, essentially. The Mrs. Dawes, what's her name? Kearns, Miss Kearns.
It's Kearns, I believe her name is, the patient they're
Right.
interviewing.
So she clearly agrees to participate in this experiment, this
Mhm.
role-playing experiment. When Dr. Sheehan walks away to get her a glass of water, why would she write that? Why wouldn't she just be like, you're in trouble, like they're trying to lobotomize you. Like it's just too subliminal. It's too vague for me to be completely on board with the idea that she's warning him as Andrew Laeddis. I feel like it comes across more as a warning to an innocent person who's now coming into the facility again, who's being brainwashed, which we'll get to the cave scene later, but it kind of just it all kind of connects to me and like makes reaffirms my thoughts about this. Something I feel like she mentions too that I think is important to point out is she talks about bombs, atomic bombs in the outside world that can reduce whole cities to ash. The next person who talks about atomic bombs and reducing the outside world to ash is the guy who jumps Leo in Ward C and strangles him from behind before he kicks his ass. You remember that part?
Mhm.
He also says to him, in quotes, he says,
It's all a game for you.
this is all a game for you, but why would anyone want to leave here? I've heard about the outside world, H-bomb tests. Why would anyone want to leave here? Why is the second patient so afraid of the outside world and nuclear bombs again, just like Miss Kearns? Are all the patients there, or patients or prisoners, whatever you want to call them, being told by the guards and the doctors there to be afraid of the outside world because they're all being conditioned to be programmed into government psyop type soldiers who are going to go out and commit atrocities like
Hmm.
we hear about in the cave scene again. So two patients that Leo has direct contact and talks with, they both mention H bombs and atomic bombs and how they're fearful of the outside world. And again, I feel like, yes, they're mentally insane, they're criminally insane on Shutter Island, but what if they're being, force-fed these ideas of the outside world, and that's why they're there because they're gonna have their brains experimented on. We'll get to that more, but
I like that. I like that.
a little bit
As a
interesting.
rebuttal, though, for that specific argument, I just truly believe that they're paranoid schizophrenics,
Sure, yeah, I
who
mean
are
that's
just always like just live their life in like fear and like having an extreme sense of fear that like a catastrophe is going to happen at any given point.
sure.
You know what I mean?
For definitely, I mean, you absolutely, but it is Martin Scorsese, and again, in every one of his movies, every line is important and means something, and it's like it is like he's also breadcrumbing people just enough to have these thoughts, like
I couldn't agree more about
you know what I
that.
mean? Like
I
I
think
just
he
think it's
wanted people
brilliant.
to have discussions like this. I think he intentionally dropped those things in there for it to be open-ended. Really quick, before we move on, too, you know who's in this shit? Buffalo Bill.
Buffalo Bill, yeah, yeah, we're gonna get to him because I have a lot to say about that.
Arthur Lee Allen, who we talked about, and Miles ain't going to see you crash. Ginger.
Yes, he's the guard.
Hmm.
That, yep, I have that down too. Why are they so disappointed? Like when he gets called out for breaking protocol, I only left for a minute. I only went to the bathroom for a minute. And they're like, you broke protocol. Like it's just a role play, right? Like why does everyone seem like he's literally sitting in the back of the room with his head down, like ashamed and embarrassed to admit that? Why?
Hmm.
Because it's fake. So why do you care if you broke protocol? Like why are you so hesitant to speak up? Like why is everybody so hesitant to discuss how Rachel Solando got out
Hmm.
if she didn't actually get out? You know, like it
Hmm.
almost is like okay, is it fake or is it not? Because if it's not, that would explain why this gentleman is so embarrassed and ashamed that he broke the rules and went potty on guard, and the
Hmm.
doctors are pissed at him. If it is fake and it's role play, then why are you pissed? Like why wouldn't you just come out and say this guard was on duty, he left to go to the bathroom for 2 minutes, he came back, Rachel's gone. Why keep that information or try to keep that from Leo if this wasn't really happening? You know what
Hmm.
I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Kind of how my mind viewed that scene. I don't know.
It's a good point. Yeah, it's a good point. You did bring up that guy though. I don't know his name. My apologies. I forget his name, but the one DiCaprio, the one that's in a cell, in the dimly lit cell, and DiCaprio's like he goes up to, and the patient says something along the lines of like, "This is a game. It's all for you." He literally calls
Yep.
him a rat in the maze. So
Yep.
he really is kind of like, in my opinion, like spoiling everything right there. He's spoiling the outcome of the movie if this is the theory that you rock with, where he's literally telling DiCaprio, like, nope, you're a patient, you're not a marshal.
Hmm.
All of this is bullshit, all of it, and it's just for you, so you can try to have that mental connection,
It's pretty
and progress,
convincing.
you
Yeah,
know?
it's convincing if you look at it that way, but he doesn't flat out say it. Like he could literally be talking about their connection. We have to back up because remember,
Yeah.
that's George Noyce, and
Is that
he's a
his name?
yep,
Okay.
and yep, in the movie his name's George Noyce. DiCaprio has that conversation with Ruffalo in the cemetery, right?
Hmm.
And he talks about George Noyce and how he's a patient at Shutter Island and he needs to find him. Ruffalo is the one who continues to plant seeds in DiCaprio's head at this point, and he's like, "So wait a second, maybe when you were looking into them, they were looking into you." And they start talking about government ops and how they have a special grant from HUAC, the House Un-American Committee, trying to seek out communism, in the United States after World War
Yeah.
II. Why would Ruffalo do this? At this point in the movie, you've been there for almost 24 hours and you're still feeding the conspiracy in Leo's head at this point when you're one-on-one with each other. Like he makes Leo even more paranoid at this point that
Mhm.
yeah, they wanted you on this island because they're going to make you feel like you're insane, so you have to stay, which we'll get to again when we get to the cave scene. Fast forward
Yeah.
to the next morning, and he finds George Noyce in the prison. And George Noyce tells him, "You're a rat in the maze. All of this is for you." Well, yeah, it is in the sense that if he is actually Teddy Daniels, they wanted to set this all up for him to make him convince himself that he's crazy so that he has to stay on the island. You could see it your way, where it's like, well, no, it's a role play experiment to try to bring him back to his Andrew Laeddis reality. But it literally also makes just as much sense that it's they're referencing all their conversations before that jail scene that George Noyce had with Teddy Daniels or Andrew Laeddis. So like it could go either way. It's specifically not defined. So if it's specifically not defined, what's to say the doctors who were recording that conversation didn't hear that and say George Noyce just fucking spoiled our plan. Now we
Mhm.
have to spin this away to make it seem like Noyce is calling out Teddy Daniels as Andrew Laeddis. After he meets with George Noyce, that's when it goes downhill. Then they find Rachel Solando. Investigation's over. Then they are super hostile towards Leo and like, aren't you leaving? Like they are completely different to him after he has that conversation with George Noyce. And it's like, hmm, why are you different to him now after talking to Noyce? Is it because you're shitting your pants now that Leo is going to be able to uncover what's going on there for real, like he planned to all along? You know what I mean? So it's like the
Yeah.
timing is so odd and peculiar. Again, you could make your point that, well, no, he's having hallucinations when he's talking to George Noyce. I really feel like the drugging him is putting all these weird visions and hallucinations into his brain about his wife or whoever these people are. Maybe these are just memories from his Holocaust prisoner of war camp or Holocaust camp Dachau. He's having all these visuals of all these people, but the drugs that they've been giving him since the ferry are what's fucking him up more and more. Like you realistically could make that argument. So
Oh yeah, no,
uh,
definitely.
there's really no definitive answer,
Um,
even as we get deeper and deeper into this, and there's plenty more to come.
yeah, you brought up the hallucination side of it. That's something that I meant to bring up too, is whenever DiCaprio is having the visuals of Andrew Laeddis, it's this man with this big scar across his face, right?
Hmm.
Particularly through the eyebrow.
Yeah.
And it's very subtle, but if you notice, Leo DiCaprio has a scar on his face, not the band-aid, but on the other side of his face, and it actually cuts through his eyebrow.
Oh,
It's
okay.
not a big scar. It's not, but it's there, and it's something that, he's made it a point to bring up in the movie. This man, with the scar, right? Like something
Yeah.
along those lines. But if you really look at DiCaprio's face, he also has a facial scar that cuts through his eyebrow, which is nearly not nearly as big as, what's depicted on what he believes is Andrew Laeddis. Jumping back to
Interesting.
your questions about Mark Ruffalo, kind of gassing him in a way, like why would you do this to kind of
Yeah.
further enhance that paranoia? Like I dig where you're going with that. For me, I think it's really just him gassing him to get him in a state of mind, like a really fragile emotional state, if you will, that will eventually allow that realization to be a thing, right? Like they want him to figure it out for himself. So to answer that specific question, I think that's why Ruffalo's kind of playing partner. In a way, he wants this fragile Leo DiCaprio on the surface because it's almost like that's the only mentality that will allow DiCaprio to connect the dots rather than just kind of this flat affect, if you will. Maybe it's like they need him to just be emotionally vulnerable and just guessing and just thinking about everything, every way, shape, or form to really accomplish their goal, which is him realizing the
I could,
twist. You know
yeah,
what I
I
mean?
mean, I can appreciate that for sure, but we're talking about the most dangerous patient they have. And
Hmm.
that's just entirely reckless and irresponsible to be running an experiment like this then in the middle of a hurricane storm, letting their most dangerous patient run the place for
Hmm.
3 days, and you've seen no improvements at this point. You're 24 hours in. He's already experiencing withdrawal symptoms, so they tell him it's getting worse. Dr. Sheen doesn't even
It's
know what
getting worse.
Dr.
It's
Sheen
getting
doesn't even
worse.
way worse. He doesn't even know what a fucking migraine is at this point. The other doctor has to tell him like, imagine razor blades tossed in your brain and shaken up. Like Sheen is he's like, what's wrong with him? What's wrong with him? That's highly reckless to continue to
Oh yeah, it's
You know what I
very
mean? Because
unethical.
like
Yeah.
that's the most extreme
Yeah.
fucking conspiracy theory you could tell him right now is no, you're here and now we're stuck here both together and we're not getting off this fucking island because they're after you. So it's just
I
highly
do like that though.
irresponsible. You know what I mean? Like just
Yeah.
super. If you're a doctor, that would be the most irresponsible thing you could do in a role
Hmm.
play experiment with someone in his hallucinating state of
Hmm.
consciousness right now to just continue to feed it. To me, it just seems like they were onto something about what is actually going on there.
Yeah, I feel that. Well, you brought up the hurricane too. And what now there's more patients on the loose, right? And now it's just pure mayhem pretty much on the island, trees down, right? Like
Yep.
that the
Yep.
weather fucks it up. And when you notice when he comes back in to the main ward or wing, I don't know what wing it is, but he literally is locking eyes with other patients who are talking to other staff. And if you really listen, you can hear the staff telling these patients, don't look at him. And once again, this kind of goes back to the water thing, like the hurricane, the rain, like just really triggering all these emotions and flashbacks and thinking patterns within Leo. And it's almost like they know, like, ah, shit, like he's in a really fragile state right now. We know how he can get when he is exposed to water or has some type of interaction with water in really any way, shape, or form. So when you notice when he comes back into the ward, literally other patients are told don't even fucking look in his direction.
That's
And I
good.
think and
Yeah.
I think that's them protecting the other patients because they don't want to trigger, as you put it, the most quote unquote dangerous patient in on the island.
That's a good point,
You know what
but
I
don't you
mean?
think they should have been taking care of those patients from the get-go and not
Oh
involving
yeah.
them in this experiment? Like
Oh yeah,
it's Mrs.
definitely.
Kearns again. You see her and she's like, if she's so triggered by Andrew Laeddis or Teddy Daniels, whoever he is, running around now in front of her, why did she
Mhm.
tell him to run? Like I don't know. It just seems like there's too many possibilities either which way. But they back to Ward C, if I may, too. Ward C is full of the most extreme looking prisoners. It doesn't even look like a mental hospital anymore. It looks like fucking Alcatraz. There's like six dudes in one cage together, all naked, which is like torturous looking. They've got guys covered in tattoos, It literally looks like a place that they hold those who are about to be experimented on. Like other patients have the other patients have all these nice facilities in Ward A and Ward B. They've got nice, calm nurses and doctors walking around. They've got a cafeteria. They've got group therapy sessions. And these guys are locked up like pigs in a pig pen,
Hmm.
literally held for the slaughter, which again kind of seems like, when we get to this cave scene where he has this either hallucination or actually meets this real Rachel Solando, she tells him something that to me just checks out completely. And he has seen the evidence to back up this claim that she tells him. Whether it's real or not, we can discuss. But you know what I mean? Don't you think that's weird? Like you're running a
Yeah.
highly scrutinized but also classified type mental patient asylum
Hmm.
to treat, clinically treat, as well as provide law and order, but you have a whole building filled with dudes who are living in their own filth, naked in the dark, screaming and scraping their nails off the walls and
Yeah.
everything. And like, that doesn't seem very clinically
Hmm.
compassionate to me. That seems like these dudes are literally about to become government agents and have their brains lobotomized so that they can be sent out into the real world to perform these atrocities that is discussed in the cave scene. It just kind of checks out for me, and I thought that that was something I didn't
Right.
really think about much.
Yeah, definitely. I really like where you're going with that. Out of all your points, that's one that probably stands out the most to me, honestly. It's a great point. For me, I think that just really highlights what treatment facilities were like though back in the day when they were like
Yeah.
really expanding research. I mean, if you look up like, you know, the early days of psych wards and trying to treat these types of, patients, the quote unquote treatment was borderline abuse.
Hmm.
Like there were some, they at times felt like they could beat, certain disorders out of people. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Yeah.
Now, what was really going on behind the scenes, I don't really know, but all I know is it's been described as almost like torture chambers, really.
Yeah.
So when I see like a ward like that or a wing like that, that's where my mind takes me to. I don't think Shutter Island is this five-star treatment facility that just offers the best forms of treatment. I think there's a lot of shady, unethical, unprofessional shit going on behind the scenes, and I think that's what highlights this wing right here for sure.
Yeah.
Some type of experiments, but as far as backing your theory, I disagree.
Yeah. I get that. That makes sense. Fair points too. The George Noyce conversation again, we don't have to really dive into that again, but I just had a note here that I wanted to kind of read. But like I said, I just feel like Shutter Island as a whole really turns against Leo's character after he has that conversation with George, because maybe they are like, oh shit, he discovered George and finds out that he's right all along. So they can
Mm,
change the narrative of that conversation that he has with George Noyce by the end of the movie. Yes, it's a vague conversation, and it can imply that Teddy is actually Andrew Laeddis, like you believe. But it also doesn't prove that either. It's very subjective at the end of the day, or could be considered subjective, and
mhm.
we are just believing the doctors at the end of the day and at the end of the movie. It still doesn't definitively, in my opinion, prove that he's Andrew Laeddis after, really listening and rewatching that conversation he has with George Noyce.
Hmm.
George Noyce closes that conversation too and says, God help you, which I think is
Yeah.
really powerful because
Hmm.
earlier in the movie, Teddy Daniels is asked by the one doctor at the cigar in the mansion, do you believe in God? And he's like, no, I'm quite serious. Do you believe in God? And he never answers it. This
Hmm.
time, George Noyce says, God help you. And it stops Teddy in his tracks and he just kind of looks at him, doesn't respond. The scene is
Hmm.
over. I think one theory that I think is crazy that I was thinking about today with all the signs and symbolism about it. What
Hmm.
if Shutter Island is like hell on earth? It's like an allegory for hell on earth. That Warden Buffalo Bill's monologue when he picks up Leo, I don't want to skip over the cave scene, but I thought that the God reference would be a good little segue
Hmm.
here. Buffalo Bill's speech to him literally sounds like he's the devil or Lucifer talking about God. he straight up says like, "How do you like God's greatest latest gift?" And he's like pointing outside, and Leo's like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "God's gift. He's given us violence. He loves violence." He's talking to about God as if he's like a fallen angel or something, like Lucifer being cast out of heaven. He's like referring to God as like this force that is still in control of everything or is in
Mhm.
control of everything. He says, "We love violence. We wage war, we drop bombs, and we burn sacrifices."
Hmm.
All very evil things, right?
Hmm.
And again, the way he says it and delivers those lines, it's like he's a fallen angel or the devil himself. And he's talking to Teddy about it, and Teddy is like just listening. And then he looks at Teddy and he's like, "You know who I am. I know who you are. We've known each other for centuries." What does that mean? Like, good
Hmm.
versus evil have known each other for centuries, like for all of time? Like, what is the point of saying that? It's very mysterious and kind of deep and dark, but
Yeah.
it does, like, when you really think about it, you're just like, huh, that actually does sound like the devil having a conversation with man who's
Hmm.
contemplating good and evil and like purgatory or something. Like it's an allegory for purgatory, which Martin Scorsese is a Roman Catholic. So like purgatory is kind of a place you get trapped in between heaven and hell, and you have, good conscious, bad conscious, and that warden just sounds like a fucking devil. It's creepy.
He's a great actor.
Great actor. Yeah.
That's the voice in Joyride, not from
Oh
this
yeah.
rocking chair. Some people like when it rains.
Baba Black Sheep.
Yeah, I mean that's a really interesting twist. Didn't think you were, I didn't know you were going to go there, but I definitely I dig what you're saying. It makes sense.
And I'm
As
not
far as
done there
his
either. We'll talk about that at the end of the movie too. That kind of
Yeah,
also goes into that, but
as far as his opening though about violence, how we love violence, I take that as if someone is like a God-fearing man, like a God-believing man, and then you look at someone like the warden who his job, his place of employment is dealing with this community of people that are just mentally gone, and psychotic and, struggle with everything they do. I looked at that as far as him talking about violence, like we love violence, and really kind of like throwing shade at God for creating violent people, talking about the war, how we can bomb each other and kill each other in war. Like, so I took the whole Warden's thing about violence and the war stuff as far as kind of like a shot at God and saying like, he's responsible for it. He's responsible for creating it. And it's almost like he's completely like done with it because like that's the type of people he works with every single day.
yeah, that's fair. That's a
You know what I
good.
mean?
That's
Like
a
that's where
yeah.
I took that.
hmm That's good. I like that for sure. Can we go to that cave scene? So that takes us to the cave scene. Teddy is looking for his missing partner. Chuck disappears mysteriously. I love the sound effect in that scene. Something we haven't even touched on was the soundtrack to this movie is amazing. Um, the deep kind of bass type tonal songs that plays are kind of creepy and eerie, and then you get the sad violin songs in there when he's having his emotional, memories and whatnot. Beautiful score. But his partner disappears and he goes into this cave and finds somebody who claims to be Rachel Solando, the real one, who she claims to be a doctor at Shutter Island. And they made her feel like she was crazy when she started asking questions about all these psychotropic drugs that they were bringing in and the reasoning for it. The thing that stands out to me about this scene the most, which is why I just still believe it to this day that Teddy Daniels is actually innocent, is because she tells him information that he did not know, even in his conspiracy theory before about the island. She is the one who tells him what goes on in the lighthouse about transorbital lobotomies and brain surgery. He would not know that if this was a hallucination. He wouldn't be able to just come up with that if this was just a conspiracy to him. Like she gives him factual evidence because it turns out to be true. He gets a lobotomy by the end of this movie. So how did he just go into this cave, hallucinate this woman who says, "You're going to get a lobotomy in that lighthouse if you're caught. You're never going to leave here," you know? And then it happens. So she gave him real facts of what's going on the island, something he didn't have before. He only had suspicion and conspiracy. Now he meets this person in a cave who claims to be a former doctor on that island, who tells him once you're deemed crazy, nothing you can ever say or do will ever help your cause. It'll only reinforce the idea that you're crazy and a paranoid schizophrenic or whatever the case is, whatever your diagnosis is. So she's the one that tells him there's transorbital transorbital lobotomies going on in the lighthouse, and that's proven true later in the movie. So, how could that have been a figment of his imagination? How would a figment of his imagination be able to tell him what's going on actually on that island if he didn't actually meet someone that would know that information?
Yeah,
You
well,
know?
I think a lot of people though know about it, don't they? Like the woman I was talking about who like is shushing him, or the Mrs. Kearns who's telling him to run.
But
You know,
no
I
one
think
tells him that though. No one tells him about the lobotomies up to until that point in the movie. He's clueless about what goes on in the lighthouse. He keeps asking what is in the lighthouse. No one ever tells him. She
hmm
does. So to me, it just kind of feels like, well, yeah, only someone who actually knows what goes on in that lighthouse would tell him, because no one else has told him up to that point. Why wouldn't the doctors tell him we do lobotomies here? Like
hmm
it's not illegal necessarily to do lobotomies. It's so why keep that information from him, you know?
I think because they were instructed not to ruin the charade. I think they, if I'm looking at Mrs. Kearns and the creepy lady from the beginning, I feel like they didn't tell him specifically what the cave lady told him because they were still following instructions. They were still going along with the experiment. However, I feel like they actually cared about him. Like I was saying earlier, like they're in group with him, they're in lunch with him, they're in the med line with him. So like they know him probably, just as well as the doctors and the staff because they live with him. They're with him every single day. So I think though
You think the
other
other
people
patients though knew about the lobotomies going on there? You think they would tell any patient what
Yeah,
goes on?
I think the Mrs. Kearns when she wrote Run in the book, and then got up and left when they were
Hmm.
interviewing her, I think that's what she was referring to because she knew, hey, if you don't get your act together, this is what's going to happen to you. And I think she knew him enough to know, yeah, this isn't going to work out in his favor. And then same with I know you brought up the lady at the beginning, like, well, if she just had that done, would she be in the right headspace to even like remember what just happened or even remember who Leo DiCaprio character is? All fair points. I dig that. But still piggybacking on what I'm saying, I think those are two examples right there where other patients do know what's going on, but they're not coming out and saying it directly because they were instructed to go with this entire experiment. Kind of like when they came in and he came in from the hurricane and they're kind of like glancing at him and everybody's like to
Sure.
the patients like don't look at him, don't, and they didn't, so like they were literally just doing what they were told. What type of reward system? I don't know. That's something else you brought up at the beginning of this session, but I think they were kind of just doing what they were told and following the rules while still having a soft spot for him and not wanting it to happen to him, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
It does. I think it's interesting. I don't buy it, but
Yeah.
it is interesting for sure. A liable defense, if you will. Like I could see that being the case. I just definitely wanted to bring it up because I think that cave scene is very eerie about what they talk about too. Creating um, the Nazis did it to the Jews. The Soviets did it to their own prisoners in the communist gulag prison system, and now we're doing it here on Shutter Island. We
hmm
know there's a German doctor working on Shutter Island because Leo calls him out and he doesn't deny it. All he says is
Right.
legal immigration a crime. This is 5 years after World War II or
hmm
seven or something. So again, yeah, like, is it actually all about communism and HUAC and government psyops? Like that's just where my mind always wants to go to that shit. But
Yeah, I
that
think
scene really like lays it out nicely for people like me who want that to be the case here. So
I think if it was like a jail that this Shutter Island was, I think I would agree with you, but I feel like the fact that they're sick patients, psychotic patients who have severe mental health disorders, I think they
yeah,
do a really good job convincing their delusions, convincing their hallucinations to be the truth, really to anybody who will listen. So I think
sure,
and I think they do that intentionally, to really show like what this community of people are, truly like and
yeah,
how
definitely,
they are when they're talking, because they truly believe what they think. They truly believe what they see, what they hear, what they feel to be reality. But it's not, So I just think they're all just severely mentally ill and truly believe in X, Y, and Z. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
fair enough, fair enough.
Yeah. And to answer your question too, because you're right, there's really no proof throughout the entire movie confirming one side or the other.
Mm-mm.
Until now, if I'm jumping too far ahead and you have something else you want to talk about, let me know. But I agree with your statement until the very last conversation DiCaprio has with Ruffalo. Obviously the cat's out of the bag. He learns the quote unquote truth. It's such a great scene. It
Hmm.
really is. It's almost like, okay, he accepts it, but then like regresses. And everything that I brought up about people caring about him and not wanting to see this for him, I keep that in mind with where I'm going here. He's acting like he's having a psychological regression,
Hmm.
really. I
Hmm.
think it's a front. I think it's just a charade because of what he says. What does he say here? He
Right.
says, what's worse, to live as a monster or die as a good man? Now, he says this after he's playing the charade to Ruffalo, where Ruffalo is like, fuck, like we just did
Yeah.
all of this and he still thinks he's
Right.
Teddy Daniels. So he's literally let down because he's like a doctor who wants to see recovery for his patient. And he looks at the other doctors and he does that little like, nope, like saying pretty
Yep.
much essentially like, nope, all that work didn't work. He's still delusional. He still believes X, Y, and Z, and I guess we have to pursue the lobotomy, right? But then that's when Leo DiCaprio says, what's worse, live as a monster, die as a good man. And I think he says that because he can't live with the guilt and the
Hmm.
trauma. So he's putting on a front so the facility does what they feel they need to do.
Hmm.
So, in my opinion, the whole experiment actually did work. Because he knows who he is, he knows he is Laeddis, he knows he killed his wife after she killed their kids, and he is incapable to, live with that reality. He can't live with himself. So he's putting on an intentional act to make it seem like, no, I'm fucking Teddy Daniels because he doesn't want to live with those memories. He doesn't want to live with that trauma, with that grief, and with that loss. So he's doing
Yeah.
everything in his power now to ensure that he gets whatever's done at the lighthouse done, lobotomy, whatever, because he just doesn't want to live with the reality, with the truth. So
I totally
I
understand that.
I agree with what you're saying until this final scene where it's like, it's kind of open-ended. You could rock with side A or side B. I agree with that throughout the entire movie until this final scene. Because when he says that to Ruffalo, Ruffalo almost knows like, oh shit. He's like shocked. Mark
Yeah.
Ruffalo's like, did he just say that? And like he doesn't even say anything, but just Ruffalo's face. It's great acting by Ruffalo's part because just his facial expression is like, "Oh, I'm talking to Laeddis right now. I'm not talking to
Yeah.
Teddy Daniels. I'm talking to Laeddis." So it's like it did work, but
Yeah.
then again, he truly cares for Leo DiCaprio. He truly cares for Laeddis. So he knows, you know what? Even though our experiment worked and he is here accepting the truth, which was the whole point of what we did,
Yeah,
he can't live on. He can't live with this
totally.
shit. And
Yep.
I'm going to, as someone who cares about him, I'm gonna let him just kind of
Yep.
make whatever decisions need to be made.
Totally
So,
hear it. Yeah. Here's
you know,
my thing about that ending scene. I think it's brilliant as well.
yeah, it really is.
But to me, that ending scene proves my theory even more. And here's why. I think this is mind blowing if you really think about it. You just sat here and said Dr. Sheehan realizes he's actually talking to Laeddis, right?
Hmm.
So why, when Laeddis gets up and walks away, accepting his fate, why does Dr. Sheehan stand up and say, Teddy? Because that's what he
Be
says.
right, right, right.
So
Because
why would you say Teddy when you know damn well you're actually talking to the person you just brainwashed into believing is Laeddis?
right.
That's my whole thing with this movie is the very last line of the movie is the wrong name. He still calls him Teddy when he has no reason to call him Teddy in that moment. It's like a slip up on his part, confirming to the viewer that Leo has been fucking gaslit and literally brainwashed by this government run psych ward into believing that he's been crazy. And he finally accepts the fact that, well, yeah, they convinced me I'm crazy, but he's really not because
Hmm.
Sheehan stands up and is like, Teddy? Like, you have no reason to call him Teddy when he just acknowledged subtly to you that, no, I know I'm Andrew Laeddis and I killed my wife and I can't live with the guilt and shame anymore. So I'm going forward voluntarily with this transorbital lobotomy.
Hmm.
So then leave it at that. He doesn't want to live as a monster. He wants to die as a good man and free himself of these memories. Why
Yeah.
call him Teddy at that point then? Like that makes no sense, and it's so deliberate that Scorsese would make that the last line of the movie. I feel like
Hmm.
he did that on purpose to continue to throw a crumb in there, like, nope, Teddy Daniels was brainwashed, and now I just brainwashed the viewers, or did I? Like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like, don't you
I
think that that
do.
makes
I
sense?
do. I disagree because before he
Hmm.
says Teddy and before Latest, I'll just say Leo. Before Leo makes that comment like that, that final thing,
Yes,
he calls him boss.
right.
So even though boss isn't Teddy, it's still kind of going along that like, yeah, we didn't fool them. They'll never fool us. So he's kind of like, because remind you, he looks at the other doctors and he's like, shit didn't work. So he's kind of just like, as someone who cares for him, like, and just a doctor who has his back, he's like, yep, like, we'll get him next time. They can't fool us. Like, just kind of talking to him, like, in that sense, because
Mm.
until Leo says, his final line about dying as a good man, he's portraying to be Teddy, and
Yes.
that's why Ruffalo calls him boss.
But he
So
also
when
calls
all
him
this when
boss in the
when he drops
lighthouse.
when he drops that though, when he drops that final line, it's in my opinion, really? Like Teddy? It's just kind of like that's you, right? That's the way I take
But
it. You
he's
know
a
what I mean?
doctor.
That's the
He
way I take it.
knows he knows that it's not though. And he's been the primary clinical psychiatrist of Andrew Laeddis, apparently, if it's Laeddis, for 2 years. He's a
Hmm.
doctor. He knows in that moment exactly what Laeddis or Teddy Daniels is doing in that moment. He's a smart guy. There's just no reason for him really to call him Teddy in that moment. And yes, you mentioned how he says boss a few minutes before that when they're on the stoop talking, but he calls him boss even when they disclose to him in the lighthouse when they're like, "Where's my goddamn partner then?" And then in walks Dr. Sheehan and he's like, "Hello, boss." So when he
Hmm.
says hello, boss, like in the lighthouse, he says that like 3 times, calls him boss in the lighthouse when he's talking to him as Andrew Laeddis. So the whole boss thing, that doesn't really necessarily apply because that's clearly something that he has been calling him for. So they want, Teddy Daniels or Andrew Laeddis to believe. So I don't know, man. I just feel like it's such a ironic that that is the last word of the movie because
Hmm.
like Teddy with a question mark even. So it's like it's asking the viewer, well, is it actually Teddy or is it Andrew? You know, it's just so deliberate and I just can't get on board with it. I feel like he's just been gaslit into believing, tricked into believing he's crazy, and it worked. And at the end of the day, Dr. Sheehan and the doctors were the ones who get exposed for the viewer at home that they were the villains. They were brainwashing these people the whole time
Mm,
in the name of government experiments and research that took place in the 50s a lot, you know?
hmm
So I don't know. I just think it's a brilliant ending. And I do want to mention one more thing, if you don't mind, in that
hmm
lighthouse, the going back to the hell on earth allegory theory I had. Teddy's reaction to his gun when they tell him it's a toy.
hmm
He shoots the doctor, right? At first, he's like, "You're not gonna bullshit me with this one. It has a dent on the barrel when I arrested so and so back in this year or whatever." And the camera shows the dent in the gun, so it's real. But then he shoots the doctor, and there's
hmm
blood splatter behind him, like pretty graphically. Hallucination? Or did it
Yeah.
actually happen? And that guy is again like the devil. Like
Yeah, I think it's hallucination like the Mrs. Kearns drinking of water. Like
yeah,
he
I
didn't
mean, for
see,
sure. Yeah.
he didn't see the water cup because of what's going on mentally. And I feel like the same thing in that situation, but just kind of flip the side of the coin where it's like he wants to kill this fucking guy because of like the mental state he's in.
But the
So yeah, I
doctor's
think
like,
it's a
please don't.
hallucination.
He
Yeah,
he he shoots and then the blood disappears and it's like it kind of gave me like Devil's Advocate vibes.
it's a great movie. I love
It is
that
a great
movie.
movie how like Pacino's just like he can control the surroundings and like
Hmm
manipulate shit that happened to make it appear like it doesn't happen. I just
Yeah,
couldn't not think of that scene and not think of Devil's Advocate. And he's like he shoots him, there's blood, and
yeah.
then he like blinks and it's gone and the doctor's response is, "Please don't do that again, Andrew."
hmm
It's just kind of weird, you know? And then he like realizes in his hand, like all of a sudden, this isn't a real gun and he breaks it. It's like he's holding the gun and he feels the gun turn into a fake gun in his hand. And that's
hmm
when he snaps it. And I'm just like, man, what if that guy is the devil? And he's
Yeah.
literally manipulating shit around him, very much like Devil's Advocate type thing. I don't know. It
hmm
was just kind of a weird, trippy thought I had when I was watching it. But
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know, dude.
Um,
I think he's innocent. I'm gonna die on the grave for that one. I'm not gonna ever change my mind. I think it's so well made, and I'm not saying like it's very well could be he's Andrew Laeddis and he's guilty. It just seems like there's not, to me, foolproof evidence that says it couldn't be the other way either, and that's
mhm.
why I just gotta stick with my original thought.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a terrific ending. It's just kind of one of those endings where, if it gets people to talk, then it was a success. And we certainly aren't the first people to have this discussion. We certainly won't be the last. So,
Yeah, for sure.
the fact that, this movie came out, what, in 2010, and we're here 16 years later, like having a discussion about who Leo's character truly is, like that just obviously shows that they hit, what they were trying to. It
Yeah,
was it was a success, man. It's a good
for
movie.
sure.
Great writing, great plot. It's original, which we don't see a lot of originality in today's films, even though this was made 16 years ago. Very original.
It's also a
Cast is
book.
fucking stacked. Yeah, book. And like you brought up too, the score is really good. Dark,
It
ominous,
is.
eerie.
Yeah.
It's a great movie, man. If I had to rank it, I would probably go. I think there's some things for me that like, it's a little long. Like I understand what they're trying to do with DiCaprio's characters, but like the flashbacks for me are like too much.
Okay.
I think they're way too long, way too often, a little too slow. If I had to rank the movie, I'll probably go like a B minus, but
Okay.
it's a good one though. It's a good one, and if
Yeah.
you haven't seen it in a while, it's a fun one to watch.
It really is. One that deserves rewatches, and I love that about these
Yeah.
mystery, psychological type movies. I'm going A minus on it. I loved it. It's one I don't get sick of at all. It's definitely top five for Scorsese for me. Yeah, I love it. I like everything about it. I think it's great. And
Hmm.
I'm glad we watched it. It was fun. I like to have the debates once in a while as opposed to
Right.
us agreeing on everything. Um, but yeah, I'm glad we got to do it finally.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, turn on your daily notifications so you don't miss any of our daily content. We appreciate each and every one of you guys. Stay tuned for next week's episode. Appreciate you guys. Have a good one.
See you, dude.